Open yourself to what is going on around you, because it is through interpreting the sounds that come into you that you are eventually learning to put out sounds. How are sound and music affecting the body? How are sound and music affecting the brain? Do they create religious experiences? Do they unite us?
We're interested in how common auditory sensations are brought about by the way the brain processes sound. So we're interested in identifying what are the areas of the brain that are involved when we listen to different types of sound, or when we, for example, localize where a sound is in space.
There are ways in which mind and body relate that we don't completely understand from a scientific perspective.
In the beginning, we may suppose there was silence. There was silence because there was no motion, and therefore no vibration could move the air. The creation of the world, however it came about, must have been accompanied by motion and therefore by sound.
From the earliest edges of recorded time, people had sought to make more of their lives.
Perhaps this is why music has such magical importance for primitive people. Often signifying life and death.
People had sought to make more of their lives than satisfying the everyday necessities of food and drink, clothing and shelter.
So everything in the world was created through vibrational energy. And everything in the world today is still vibrating.
The effect of cymatic frequencies on texture, structure, water, oil.
In vibrating glycerin, we see continuous waves which form the queerest figures. And yet, the extraordinary things we see here are simply and solely the effect of vibration.
And you can hear it coming off that. Built in this has the Fibonacci system built in here, as the whole of the universe has the works as per the Fibonacci numbers. If you take 1 and 1 makes 2, then you put 2 and 1 makes 3, you take 3 and 2 makes 5.
In nature, we can see that structures are formed in natural patterns. And that living creatures group together in rhythmic formation. And I think possibly that what happened is that we learned to try and communicate first with sounds like grunts or different sounds we could make, which were either threatening or benevolent, or in which depend on our feelings. These sounds are feelings driven. They are driven by a necessity to communicate a feeling. I'm unhappy about this, I'm at peace with this, I want this. And there are all sorts of ways you can do it without specific knowledge of words. And I think that's how we started. And I think that sound is liberating. I think it gave us freedom. Sound gives us the possibility to use our breath in all sorts of ways and to get out of ourselves. And singing, as I hope to teach it and so on, is a way to learn to externalize our thoughts, our feelings, our reactions to what surrounds us.
This is where you do your kind of like Tibetan monk impression.
Brothers and sisters, the spirits of this land, thank you for allowing us to be here, and we call that you dance with us today. Aho. Aho.
Sound is physical, a mechanical wave of pressure and displacement. A movement of molecules produced by vibrations that can only be heard if they are in a certain frequency.
These vibrations set up invisible waves in the surrounding air. The speed with which sound waves move depends upon the medium through which they pass.
So we know that when you hear a frequency of sound, it's called a cycle per second. It's a complete cycle. Sound exists on all levels. You can hear it within the window of hearing. It can be below that. It can be above that. It can be sound we can hear, yes, and there's anahata sound, which is heard in the heart. So all these different forms of sound, and in the beginning was sound, and we are all composed of sound. And there's not much more you can say about it. We are sound. And undoubtedly, it's going to be, in the beginning was the word was sound, you see. And from that point, we go on. It is, after all, wasn't it science that told us about the Big Bang? The great gong master in the sky banging the gong of creation, so the gong tone of life was created, and we're still resonating in the far reaches of the universe. We can hear that background hum, that sound of the gong going. And we're hearing it, of course, in every cell of the body, in every atom of the body. The gong goes back 6,000 years or so in our history to the early Bronze Age. But The Mandarin Chinese characters on the face of this gong were put there 2,500 years ago by Gautama Buddha. And it sort of gives you the key or the code to the gong. It means happiness has arrived. Translated could be spiritualizing matter. Spiritualizing matter is really the whole thing about sound healing. So this also means that you and I are one, and that we have one planet, one humanity, one universe that we live in. And it's this oneness that flows out of the gong. It's called the blessing or the darshan of the gong. It's more like cosmic prana that comes out of it. And this is what goes into us. If one held their hands very close to it, you would feel the atomic fission or the disintegration of the very molecules of the atom of the gong, creating heat with your hand. So just listen for a moment. It only takes about anywhere from 3 seconds to 90 seconds of playing to really put you into an altered state of consciousness, and this is helpful in case you don't have much time to gong.
How does sound affect our bodies? Can it penetrate our skin? Can it make our cells vibrate? Or even rearrange our DNA?
Even now, as my voice comes to you, it is carried by these airwaves to be conveyed to your own brain by nerve impulses created within your ear. Sound waves beat against this membrane as drumsticks beat upon a kettle drum or tympanum. So it is naturally called the tympanic membrane. It lies a little more than an inch from the outer opening and completely shuts off the eardrum from the ear canal, just as a drumhead completely covers a drum. Hidden immediately beyond this barrier lies the oddly shaped and highly specialized organ which by far surpasses any instrument of human invention in its ability to detect and to interpret sounds of every conceivable kind and degree. It is indeed rightly called the most remarkable mechanical system in the human body. And now let us examine the general position of this apparatus when seen from the front. Here is the ear canal and the more internal parts which have an outlet into the throat. The Eustachian tube. This important connecting passage opens just above the tonsil. Like other important sense organs, the ear lies close to the brain. All sound waves entering the ear are converted into nerve impulses.
The cochlea is this curled up structure, and running along it you've got this tube of fluid, and when the end of the cochlea is moved by these vibrating bones which are transmitting the vibrations of the air around you, this sets up waves that move along the cochlea. So you've got this transmission of transduction, if you like, of this physical movement out there in the world that gets changed down into an electrical signal at the cochlea. And because it's spread out along high to low frequencies, the representation, the way that the information's getting up to your brain has already got encoded in it the difference between high frequency and low frequency sounds. It isn't the only way that you can detect sound. So some of that information can get in directly through what's called bone conduction. And that's if a sound is, for example, is quite intense, it could actually simply be vibrating the physical muscles and bone of your own physical being, and then that's setting up vibrations that then cause these waves in the cochlea.
So what you could hear then was me chanting on a single note, and then floating above it, these high flute-like sounds above, which are the harmonics. And what happens, these sounds are purely in tune. And one of the things that happened in Western music was in the 17th century, because of the popularity of pianos and, well, keyboards, was a problem of tuning. And, you know, when you go from a note to its fifth, from the fifth to its fifth, from its fifth to its fifth, you should eventually reach the octave, but you don't. You overlap by a quarter of a semitone, known as the Pythagorean comma, the quarter of a semitone. And the big problem was what to do with this quarter of a semitone. And so what was done was, it was taken and put back into the octave. So all the notes in the octave since Bach, basically, in the 70s, are a little bit stretched or squashed. So no music is in tune since Bach. And so when you listen to music, when you're singing music, when you're making music, it's all a little bit out of tune. But when you do this kind of chanting, it's absolutely in tune, because the sounds you're making come about through resonance. You're not making them, you're not pitching them, you've got nowhere near a piano, nowhere near any instruments. You're just allowing the natural resonances of the cavities and the geometry to become audible. And that means that when you're doing this kind of chanting, you're supremely in tune. You're in tune with each other, you're in tune internally with your inner sonorous geometry, you're in tune with nature, you're in tune with the geometry of this universe. And that means you can be sound in mind and body.
Each vibrating string may be made to produce different tones. To explain some of the reasons for this, let us observe this string. Here there is no motion at these endpoints or nodes. The string vibrates along its full length and produces its longest possible wavelength. This is the lowest or fundamental frequency of the string, sometimes called the first partial. If the string vibrates in two segments, it produces a wavelength that's 1/2 that of the fundamental. This is the first overtone, which may be called the second partial. Since wavelength is inversely proportional to frequency, the frequency of the first overtone is twice that of the fundamental. When the string vibrates in 3 segments, it produces its second overtone, the third partial. Here, the frequency is 3 times that of the fundamental. But usually, several different modes of vibration occur simultaneously. The result is a compound waveform. Here we represent the fundamental tone supplemented by its first and second overtones. Differences in the audible components of a sound determine its quality. Quality helps us recognize the characteristic sounds of various musical instruments and distinguish one voice from another.
This gong here is the earth gong. You stay there a moment, don't go away. I'll tell you what its tune looks like. It's tuned at 138.1. That's the vibration. I play this, and it's vibrating. And it'll go on. And on. And on. And on. You lying there, you're gone. You're having a gong bath, and you don't know where you are. You're out in space. So that's the Earth's gong. This is Jupiter. But this is the way I play for gong bath meditation now. I have friends who like to give it the full belly, which I can show you if your mic is. And you hear the overtones. You can hear the overtones going down there. And so on and so on and so on. But less is better. It doesn't need that. Because your cells in the body are so delicate. They can hear that. That to them is very loud.
In terms of cells within the brain, of course, that's the basis by which we respond to sound. But I think any consequences of the way in which sound is processed within the brain and how that affects the rest of the body is a much more sort of indirect effect. I don't think it's there's any evidence to support the notion that non-neural cells would respond directly to sound.
Gong bass. First of the day. Back tomorrow for some more?
Yeah, I'm definitely coming back. I'll come back with the people lining up around the corner.
Sound comes into your ears, and then there's a pathway which goes up the brainstem at the base of the brain, which transmits the sound information from the ears right up to a part of the cerebral cortex, the grey matter covering the brain, which is called the auditory cortex, which is at the side of the brain in an area called the temporal lobe. The frontal cortex, which is involved in pattern sound analysis like melody analysis as well, is obviously at the front of the brain. So the cerebellum is a very ancient structure which you can find in birds and lower mammals, which has a large number of functions concerned with movement and with balance. It's been implicated in some aspects of auditory timing. The other structure I was talking about, the basal ganglia, is like a collection of neurons, a grey matter nucleus, which is at the base of the frontal lobe, and that's a structure which has very much been implicated in the processing of complex rhythmic information. In other words, sound patterns that have a beat.
Therefore, listening to music, listening to someone speaking, particularly, of course, if it's someone you know, will not just be registered by the traditional hearing parts of the brain, going from the ear right up through the different neural pathways that are involved in processing sound working together in a way that gives rise to our perception of what the sound is, but also sound activates other areas of the brain as well, particularly in the limbic system, which is a collection of a number of different brain areas, but one in particular, the amygdala, particularly concerned with the generation and regulation of emotions.
Certainly it's the case that music's capacity to modulate or mediate our emotions very probably plays a critical role in mediating the context within which our emotions are articulated, the biological context, the limbic system, which is intrinsically related to the autonomic nervous system. Hence, it's quite conceivable that changes induced by music in someone's limbic system can, for example, lead to a diminution of stress, which will correlate with a reduction of hormonal and bodily stress indicators, which is not a billion miles away from some aspects of what the healing process would be recognized as being within the Western medical paradigm.
Day and night, in steady rhythm, there operates within the human body a marvelous machine. The force that starts each beat lies within the heart itself, as we see in this turtle's heart. It continues to beat long after its removal from the body.
Indian drums were treasured by the Indian tribes. The medicine man's dance warded off the evil spirits and was supposed to bring health and happiness to his tribe.
Shamanic healing works on the soul level, and it presupposes that any illness, be it physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental, has an energetic root. And we all have an energy body that surrounds us. It extends about arm's width. Now that energy body contains a lot of our experiences in life, and it can also absorb things from the outside, perhaps that don't serve us very well. It gets loaded up over time, just through the process of living. It can be loaded up two ways. It can either absorb, say, negative emotions or thought streams from the outside, or if we repress our own powerful thoughts or emotions and turn them inward and against ourselves, it can cause tears or breaks in the or blockages in the energy body that then causes problems with our health. So the shamanic healing involves going into a trance, using the drum, using sound, being able to see or perceive on a different level, and removing those blockages. The drum is our most ancient instrument. It is seen as the heartbeat of the earth. It mimics the heartbeat of the earth, so it connects us. It's a very grounding instrument. It connects us with our source, deep into the earth. But at the same time, on a kind of more practical level, it literally changes our brain waves from beta consciousness, which is the rational mind, everyday thinking, the monkey mind, through alpha, which is a meditative state, into theta, which is the dreaming level of consciousness. It's when we're dreaming, we're on that level. Now, shamanically, that's the place we want to get to, because the dreaming level is the place we see that we can alter reality, because a lot of the shamanic cultures believe that nothing happens in this reality, the physical world, before it's happened in what the Aborigines call the dream time. So we go directly to the source of that through changing our brainwaves, through using the drum, taking us into a trance.
You can measure brainwaves in different frequency bands. Some are faster than others, so the alpha waves are the fastest. And these oscillations that occur naturally within the brain are thought to be a reflection, a measure of the connectivity between different brain areas. So the balance of activity within these different frequency bands can change according to the state of wakefulness, according to the presence of sensory stimuli, according to what the person is actually doing. And some of these activity patterns, some of the frequency bands are more associated with relaxation, for example, than others. So if the overall activity in the brain becomes dominated by particular frequency bands, then this can promote relaxation, is probably the basis by which things like meditation might work.
Here, sound waves result from vibrations of air that start in the vocal folds of the trachea. These waves are reflected back and forth in the cavities of the mouth, nose, and head, thus producing the complex sounds of speech and song.
The rhythms change from place to place, but the spirit is everywhere the same. When boy meets girl, the dreams are of tomorrow, always tomorrow.
Sound resonates within our bodies and is received from ear to brain as a form of communication. Sound is a signal. Sound is a language. Sound is a song. Breath for living and for being. E. Sound. What have I done? I have very clearly said a vowel E whilst my body was extended and using my mouth. Sound. That is the sound that is expected of a singer who is going to try and send their sound over to a public or to whoever is listening. And in order to achieve this opening, it is a good idea to do it by first listening to what is around you. Because if you really want to listen, you can't do it like this. This is being closed into ourselves. You do. What's going on around me? I'm listening.
And then I want to invite you to become really aware of all the sounds around us. We're really lucky to be in a place where there isn't any noise, where it's mostly the breeze and the leaves, people's voices that we can hear, maybe a bird. Just become really attuned to the subtle sounds and to your place within that. Play with different pitches, just let the sound move through your body and around you and to the other. And as you keep going with that, make sure your breathing is really deep and grounded. And the sound can really come from your lower belly and rise up through your heart and obviously your voice and resonate in your head and just move out of you and never leave you at the same time.
Sacred ecstasy dance is a free-form movement practice that combines improvised movement with breath work. It's a very powerful way of going on an inner journey. The usual process that we'd go through within a dance, we'd have a intention setting at the very beginning. Again, just to kind of align people to the idea that this is for healing and for journeying. We would then move into a warm-up where we're warming up each part of the body bit by bit. And in a way that's particularly as a kind of safety measure, just so that no one gets any kind of pulled muscles or anything like that. But it's also a really nice way of starting to feel into and start getting conscious of each part of the body.
One such question might be, why is music organised around a regular beat or pulse? Or why is music almost always organised around a regular beat or pulse? That's an interesting question, and it turns out that applying science to it throws up some quite unusual findings. First of all, we seem to be the only primates, certainly, who are capable spontaneously of organising our behaviour around a regular beat or pulse. Secondly, we're certainly the only primate, not probably the only species, but certainly the only primate, who can work together with another member of our species without even thinking about it, to co-organise our behaviours around a regular beat. Now, that seems to be almost an innate, biologically ingrained, biologically determined capacity. And it's something that's so basic that for many years it just wasn't explored. What's interesting about the fact that one person can do and another person can join in without even thinking about it? In fact, the first person can drop out, and the other person knows exactly when they're going to start again, can pick up the beat, can internalize the pulse. That's a really interesting question about music. Why should music involve that sort of ability? Or to put it the other way around, why should that sort of ability manifest itself as music?
Everything is vibration, because life is vibration, and we are surrounded by life. This grass is alive, this tree, the air, there's plenty of life around us. And music, what is music, is vibration. So music and energy of life is the same. Yeah, I'd say dancing saved my life. It was a time when, where you're stuck in your head, and all the vibration, which we were just talking about, is all in your head, and it's going. You can't see anything, you can't hear anything, because it's just going. It's stuck in the head, and it's. And then you can just dance, and then there's like suddenly the bottom drops out, and the vibration comes out, and you're like with the vibration suddenly, and then so you can just dance with it, whether it's anger, whether it's love or stillness, or whatever it is, you can just be with that feeling. You don't and then the world opens up, because suddenly it's transparent now. Everything flows in and flows out.
There were motor acts, so shaking your head, going for a walk, physically doing these rhythmic activities. So it's never just the sound, or just the vibration, it's you doing something in time with it. So, or producing actions to cause the vibration. So for my money, you're still tapping into those sensory motor networks. They're evolutionarily old. They're to do with very simple reactions, but also in training behaviour with other people. And humans really like it. And I don't think that we like it because it's opening up our brain in a different way. I just think it seems to let you fall back onto a pattern of processing which is maybe very old and very pleasant.
To correlate a particular pattern of brain activity associated with a particular region of the brain and things like meditation and so on just isn't there. We have a hard enough job trying to get a handle on the neurophysiological underpinnings of consciousness, for one thing. So trying to go beyond that is something which is still an area that we know very little about. But undoubtedly, as time goes on, there will be more work in this area. I mean, the largest neuroscience conference in the world, which of course takes place in the United States, had as its big guest lecturer a few years ago the Dalai Lama. So at least scientists are now engaging with those who practice meditation and so forth.
So all the scientists right now are zoned in on sound and vibration as being perhaps the next step in healing in general. So I think that we'll just leave it up to the scientists to reveal their experiments and the good news that we need now for a science that really is a holistic science and something that will help us.
I have a profound belief through my whole being that I am part of something universal, of which I'm a tiny, tiny little speck. But that little speck aspires to go back to a great universal something, which can be, you can call God, or in any kind of language or religious thing you like, but which is far beyond our comprehension and even the scientist's comprehension. Because it is not only science, nothing is only science.
There were flaming fireballs in space. We call them stars.